This is question number 3B on the free response. And it says, find all real solutions to 1 over x minus 1 minus 2 over x squared minus 1 equals to negative 1/2. So finding all real solutions means we want to find solutions that when we plug them back into the original equation, they hold true. And also solutions that do not contain complex numbers, that is, solutions that don't have I. Okay? So with the approach for this equation is to look at it and try to find factoring patterns that we see in order to combine this whole side using a common denominator. And the reason why we want to do that is because we're looking for x. Because remember, finding the solution means looking for x, or it's the same thing as looking for the zeros. Okay? So over here we see x minus 1. There's something we could do to that, but x squared minus 1 seems like one of the functions that we remember from the list of factors that we should know. So that is of the type x squared minus y squared, which equals x plus y, x minus y. That means we can convert x minus 1 into, or x squared minus 1 into x plus 1, x minus 1. And that's going to help us find a common denominator. So we can rewrite that into 1 over x minus 1 minus 2 over x plus 1, x minus 1 equals negative 1/2. Okay, so now we see that both of these have x minus 1, but this one's missing an x plus 1 on the bottom to make it a common denominator. So let's multiply this guy top and bottom by x plus 1. So we're going to have on the bottom x plus 1, x minus 1. We said we'll multiply that by x plus 1, and the minus 2 stays alone because the factors are already there. And then on the right side we have negative 1/2. Okay? In order to find x, we want to multiply this denominator over to the other side because we can't find an x when there's something being divided by x. That's 1 over x. Okay, so the idea is to multiply this over and then subtract and put everything on one side, equal it to 0, and then try to factor out. And you'll see as I go. So here we have x plus 1 minus 2 equals negative 1 times x plus 1, x minus 1. So now I can go ahead and FOIL this out, or as I know this pattern to be x squared minus y squared, I can just go ahead and do that a little faster. So I can change this into x squared minus 1 once again. So remember, the reason why I had made it into x plus 1, x minus 1 was to find the common denominator. Now I can bring it back to x squared minus 1. So now let's multiply this factor negative 1/2 over to the side. That way we won't be dealing with any fractions. So if we multiply this over to the other side, it'll have a factor of 2 over there instead of 1/2 for a fraction. So, and let's do this. X minus 1. So now we have times negative 2 x minus 1 equals x squared minus 1. All I've done is pass the negative 1/2 over to the other side by dividing by 1/2 or multiplying times 2. It's the same thing. So let's factor in the negative 2 into here. We get negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 1 is positive 2 equals x squared minus 1. So now this looks very neat. Let's bring everything over from this side to this side in order to factor out and find our x's. And the reason why I'm moving it to the side is because remember, whenever you want to factor something, you want the x squared, or the highest power variable, to be positive. You never want that to be negative. If it's negative, you want to divide everything by a -1 and convert it into positive. So let's go ahead and cancel these terms out by adding a 2x and subtracting a 2. And then we have to do the same thing on the other side. So we get 0 equals x squared. There's no 2x, so that's just going to stay the same. And then we have -1 minus 2 gives us a -3. Okay? And now we can factor this out. 3 times 1 is 3. And then we could do 3 times 1 with a -1, which would, if we add these two together, it gives me a +2. If we multiply them, it gives me a -3. And that's what we want. So we have 0 equals x plus 3, x minus 1. So if we solve for each individually, we get x plus 3 equals 0, x minus 1 equals 0. Subtracting 3 from each side gives me x equals -3. Adding 1 to each side gives me x equals +1. But these are not my final solutions. Remember that we have to plug it back into the original in order to make sure that it holds true. Okay, so we have -3 and +1. Let's start off with the +1. 1 over 1 minus 1 minus 2 over 1 squared minus 1 equals -1/2. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do the algebra, and we get 1 over 1 minus 1 is 0, minus 2 over 0 equals -1/2. So you should notice that since these factors are being divided by 0, that's going to give me an indeterminate value. So this cannot be true, and so that x equals 1 is not a solution. So we've just ruled out x equals to 1 because that's an extraneous solution. Now let's try to do x equals -3. So for x equals -3, we have 1 over -3 minus 1 minus 2 over -3 quantity squared minus 1 equals -1/2. And so this gives me 1 over -3 minus 1 is a -4 minus 2, and this gives me +9 minus 1, which is 8, equals to -1/2. Now we could cancel this 2 with one of the 2's in the 8 convert to 4, so that we get -1/4 minus 1/4 equals 1/2. So notice how these already have a common denominator, so we could go ahead and combine them, meaning I could go like this and say -1 minus 1 is a -2 over 4, and if we cancel the 2 with one of the 2's here, we get -1/2 equals -1/2, which is correct. Therefore, my only solution to this problem is x equals -3.